Hello, and welcome to Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. The process of healing relationships begins with Step 8. After studying, journaling, and practicing the first 7 steps, we recognize that our shortcomings resulted in other people being hurt. With the help of the 12 steps and our higher power, we have the tools we need to work through this process. We start to exercise a new willingness to make things right. As we learn to forgive, we become healthier and better able to make amends. Step 8 has 2 parts. The first is to make a list of persons we had harmed, and the second is to become willing to make amends. The only physical action required is to make a list. To become willing indicates we are ready for more recovery. Before coming into Nar-Anon, many of us blamed others for the chaos in our lives. We may have even blamed God. We have overcome many barriers within ourselves to get to this point. Thinking with an honest, open, and willing heart helps us accept responsibility for our past actions and eliminates the need to place blame elsewhere. We are learning to move forward. We think over our 4th step inventory by remembering events and the people involved. Upon reflection, we may have regrets about our behaviors and wish we could go back and change them. We start making a list in our minds. Eventually, we go a little bit further and write down names. We then become willing. A member shares, "What, me? Make amends? I was the one with the steady salary, the one who paid the bills, the one who did the chores. It was my credit rating that was wiped out by bankruptcy due to his addiction. I didn't sympathize with his pain or try to understand his problems. I judged him and other people too. I thought no one could compare with me and my dedication, my tenacity, my heroic martyrdom. I believed I was a good person, one who had not hurt anyone. I didn't have any amends to make. I guess it was wrong to yell at my husband just because he yelled first. My friends must have been hurt when I stopped seeing them, and it was certainly wrong to lie to family members. All right, maybe I do have a list to make." Getting this far in our step work implies we understand that at times we may have been at fault. All we really need is to give ourselves some quiet private time to think about our relationship with other people. Of course, everyone's list will be unique, but there are general guidelines that can be applied. If we do not think we need to make amends for anything, we should look through our 4th step work again. Reviewing character defects improves our memory. Suggestions for applying Step 8. The purpose of Step 8 is to understand that we only have to become willing to make amends for the harm we caused. Prayer, meditation, and journaling will help in working this step. We do not need to take any action to be willing. We only need to ask our higher power for the readiness and strength to do it. Make a list of people we have harmed, with the help of our sponsor or another Nar-Anon member. Preparing to make a list. Of all the people we harmed, more than likely we harmed ourselves most. The first name on this list might be ours. Did we delay or ignore our own health care, sometimes to the point of serious illness? Did we cancel vacations or drop out of school? Did we berate ourselves for distrusting our instincts and judgments, make unhealthy financial decisions, or deny ourselves simple pleasures? We can make amends to ourselves for not knowing how to cope with our situation and feelings. This is not to say we write off our mistakes, but acknowledge that we are not perfect. The people next on our list might possibly be the people who qualify us for Nar-Anon. Who among us has not been judgmental, antagonistic, or insulting? Our behavior toward the addict and others has not always been considerate and understanding. We may have been indifferent, manipulative, or callous. If we are honest with ourselves, we can admit our relationship with the addict emphasized many of our character defects. Our character defects existed long before our involvement with the addict. As we reflect further, we may conclude there are people we have harmed who are not directly related to the problems of addiction. Our list may include friends, relatives, colleagues, or other people in our lives. When we look at the people we have harmed, we realize our character defects played a major part in interfering with their lives and our relationships. Consequences of our actions may have caused us and others emotional, financial, and physical pain. When we were angry, we may have harmed ourselves with feelings of depression and self-pity. We may have lashed out at others when confronted with issues of guilt. Our frustration may have led us to try to control others. Fear of abandonment or isolation may have also destroyed our relationships. True intimacy may have been lacking because of our inability to trust. Our list can include those we have harmed regardless of whether or not they acknowledge what we have done. Many find it useful to refer back to the previous steps in order to identify the people we have wronged. Some members start their list with their closest family members, others with those they feel were most harmed. The list might include people who have passed. Regardless of how the list develops, it is very personal and entirely our decision. A member shares, "In developing my list, I considered arguments I had with family members while trying to defend the addict." Question number 1. How reluctant am I to make this list? Explain. I am pretty reluctant because it sounds like a lot of mental and emotional work. Number 2. Am I willing to be completely honest? I think so. Number 3. What role does the God of my understanding have in this step? I am asking God to help me with this step because I don't think I am humble enough to do it on my own. Number 4. How can a sponsor or other Nar-Anon member help me work this step? I imagine they could provide personal examples that I can relate to, which would be helpful to making my list. Number 5. In what ways have I harmed myself? I have blamed myself for the addict's behavior. I haven't taken care of my own mental health and allowed the addict's problems to rule my life. Number 6. Why is it important to forgive myself? If I forgive myself, I think it will help me forgive others. I think forgiving myself will help me let go of so much pain from the past. God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know it's me. Making a list. When we make our list, it is important to remember there is no right or wrong way to begin. Answering the following questions may help us in deciding who to include. Question number 7. How did I ignore the needs of my children in my obsession with the addict? I was definitely preoccupied with the addict's problems and didn't always have the energy for my other children's problems. I didn't always give them the emotional support they needed. Number 8. How was I angry or impatient with relatives or friends who tried to give me advice? I was angry mostly at my mother-in-law for her incessant meddling and enabling. We would argue about her role in helping the addict. She always ended up doing what she wanted. I have felt some bitterness towards relatives who didn't show love and compassion to my son, like he's not worthy of being their relative. I was irritated with relatives who gave advice, like their simple solutions would actually work. Number 9. Did I isolate myself in an attempt to hide problems associated with addiction? I am an introvert by nature, but yes, I didn't have the energy to make new connections or invest much energy into others since I was so overwhelmed by the addict. I stayed closed off from most people to avoid having to share my problems. Number 10. How have those relationships that meant the most to me been affected by my behaviors? The relationships could be stronger and closer if I was more engaged and less preoccupied with my own problems. All relationships take effort, and I know there have been times where I have been too tired to put in the effort. Number 11. How have I mistreated others because of my state of mind? I have been impatient, irritable, and not able to give others the emotional support they needed. Number 12. Did I avoid anyone, family or friends? If so, when and why? I avoid people in general. People exhaust me. If I have something particularly stressful going on, I will tell my sister and have her pass along my troubles to my parents or whoever else needs to know. I don't have the energy to repeat upsetting news. Number 13. Did I lie or engage in some form of inappropriate conduct in an attempt to protect my secrets or to cover for the addict? I don't think so. I just didn't share my troubles with most people. Number 14. How have I neglected myself, family, friends, community, or my higher power? I've been in survival mode, where every day is just something to get through, with as little trouble as possible. The more people and things I avoid, the less drama I have. Number 15. Have I entered agreements, then refused to abide by the terms? No, I am responsible to a fault. Number 16. Have I misused funds or resources, borrowing or extravagant spending, especially if trying to buy love or friendship? No, I don't borrow from anyone or spend extravagantly. I hate wasting money. Number 17. Did I neglect my health, education, career, and/or productivity? I neglected my mental health. I should have sought the help of a therapist for myself a long time ago. Members share on making a list. My list will have to include my daughter, who is not an addict. She was always the good one. I thought she was so independent and mature because she did everything for herself without my help, the opposite of her brother, who is an addict. It was not until I started working the steps that I realized I had neglected her. I spent more time and energy on my son than on my daughter. The money wasted on getting my son out of trouble could have been spent more wisely on her education. Spiritually, I was not there for her. Morally, I was teaching her that bad behavior received more attention. Yes, my daughter is definitely on my list. Living with active addiction before Nar-Anon was a very dark period. At one point, I lost so much weight a friend thought I was abusing drugs. I was sick with worry every time a crisis occurred. An amend I owe myself is to become better able to act in my own best interest regardless of the addict's situation. Here is a sample format that can be used to make a list. It may be easier to start by listing the person and the harm. It is helpful to include the reason someone is on the list. Careful consideration will help us when we are ready to make amends. The sample format has 4 columns, and it's the person harmed, and then our wrongdoing, and the effect on them, and the effect on us. So that's the template that you can use as you go through and determine who needs to be on the list. My list. Myself. I blamed myself for the addict's failures and for not knowing what to do. I blamed myself for not taking good care of my mental health. I put myself last. This has contributed to feeling depressed and hopeless. It has made it hard for me to have the energy for other relationships. My son, the addict. I tried to control him and enabled him. I judged him. This prevented him from being responsible for his own actions, prolonged the problems, and hurt our relationship. My other children. I wasn't always emotionally available for them. The biggest problems involved the addict, and the problems of everyone else felt like a burden. The other children might have felt less important, as their problems were unnoticed, ignored, or minimized. I wasn't the parent I wanted to be, which makes me sad. My spouse. I blamed him when he didn't want to react the same way I did to the addict. I didn't want to listen to him or do things his way. I lashed out and took the addict's side. My obsession with trying to help the addict consumed my energy, which hindered my efforts to have a healthy relationship. I couldn't trust anyone. This caused my spouse pain and hurt, and made us both feel alone. My closest friends. My ability to care was overshadowed by my own troubles. I wasn't able to engage as much as they deserve. I imagine they felt ignored, hurt, or unsupported by my lack of effort. I have lost touch with some friends. It feels like I am defective, that I can't manage relationships. Becoming willing. The next part of this step is to become willing to make amends. It does not say, make amends at this point. It just says, to become willing. This may not come easily. The same humility necessary for the 5th step, admitting the exact nature of our wrongs, will be needed for true willingness to make amends. Amends come more easily from a heart free of resentments. Insights we gained from working the earlier steps may lead us to see we cannot make progress unless we make peace with the past. We are reminded that the Nar-Anon Program is gentle in its application, and no matter how long it takes, we are never asked to do anything unless we are ready. With the help from our higher power and a sponsor or a trusted program friend, we understand that working Step 8 is an act of self-love and healing. Question number 18. Is there someone I am unwilling to include on my list? Why? My mother-in-law. She is too difficult to deal with, and I don't know how I could have handled her differently. Also my parents. I resented them for not being the kind of parents I needed. They focus on their own lives and haven't been a resource to me. Number 19. Are resentments and grudges still interfering with my willingness to make amends? To some extent, yes, but also the fact that I was in survival mode and didn't try to hurt anyone, so I try not to feel too bad, given that I was doing all that I could. Number 20. How does my pride prevent me from becoming willing? Looking back, I'm sure I could have done things differently, but I didn't know any better, so I feel like I should get a pass. Number 21. In what ways do I harm myself by remaining unwilling? I'm not sure. I guess I don't fully own my actions when I remain unwilling. Number 22. What do I think I am giving up when I become willing? I think I give up my innocence. I have felt like a victim to what the addict put me through. If I acknowledge harms I have done to others, then I am not an innocent victim of those circumstances. Number 23. How do I become willing to make amends without expecting anything in return? I can't change the past, so I think the best way is to become conscious of my words and actions going forward. If the opportunity presents itself, I can ask the people I negatively impacted how I can make amends in a way that is meaningful to them. Number 24. How can I trust my higher power to lead me in this process? I can pray and ask God's guidance for the best way to work through this process. I can trust that He will provide opportunities for me to make amends and move forward. Number 25. What are my feelings as I become willing? Explain each. I feel anxious. I haven't read ahead and do not know what the next step is or what I will need to do. I feel embarrassed. I've had such a challenging experience with the addict and so much heartache that I don't like having to own my part in it. I like to say, well, I'm only human. But then again, I can do better. I shouldn't settle for bad behavior, including my own. I feel sad. I wish I could always say the right things and behave in the right way when faced with extreme challenges. I feel sad about hurting others and sad about not being the person I should be. A member shares, I have not handled relationships in a healthy manner. In fact, there may have been times when I have harmed others because of the fear and frustration I have felt in dealing with active addiction. Whatever the issue, applying the knowledge I have obtained using the program has brought healing to many aspects of my life. Each year my Step 8 list becomes smaller, yet it must always include me. A Step 8 story. Suddenly, I realized I had not yet put my new registration sticker on my license plate. Preoccupied with work, I had forgotten to do this simple thing. The deadline was the next morning, and I had misplaced the sticker. Possible consequence, getting a ticket. Not a big deal, but this seemed terrible to my angry, tired, procrastinating, perfectionistic mind. I lost it. My perfectionism and lack of prioritizing was in full force as I tore through the house searching. My disease looks amazingly similar, if not identical, to the addict's at times. When my thinking gets twisted, I can be quite insane. My husband gently offered to help in the search, but to no avail. With a little focus and gratitude for my dear one's loving kindness, I found some sense. I prayed and meditated on my situation. I decided to go to bed, hoping I would wake up rested and in a better mood. The next morning, I found the registration sticker in 5 minutes. I realized I needed to do something about my overreactions. Step 8 is all about willingness. It is not the actual amend, but the total honesty back to my Step 4 inventory. But open-mindedness, sharing and finding integrity and acceptance in Step 5, and the willingness, becoming entirely ready to let go of my more objectionable qualities in Step 6. Then, humbly and fully cognizant of reality, we asked God to remove our shortcomings in Step 7. Here I was at Step 8. Being a longtime member of Nar-Anon, I have climbed these steps many times. I have already become willing to make amends to those who were, for me, the easy and sort of easy names on the list. Now comes the difficult part. Just as those who are closest to the addict are the most affected, I too hurt the ones who loved me the most. When I was in denial, I made excuses for being awful toward my husband and myself. To become willing, I have to enter the realm of forgiveness. I like to think of this as being forgiving. With the help of my higher power, I am ready to put myself and my husband on the list and become willing to make amends for my part. Becoming willing in Step 8 creates the path to Step 9. When I take Step 8, there is hope for me to change my behavior. I am looking forward to working Step 9 with my name and my husband's name on the list. Reflections on Step 8. In Step 8, we address the past harms by taking a comprehensive look at our personal relationships. To mend those relationships, we must first make a list of those we have harmed. We are then asked to become willing to make amends to those on our list. It is important to acknowledge that the only thing we need to do is make a list and become willing. The action of making amends is not required in this step. Working this step is personal and can be done in many ways. It is important to remember that ongoing recovery and spiritual growth requires willingness. We must let our higher power be our guide. It may also be beneficial to discuss our feelings with the sponsor as we prepare to move forward. The completion of Step 8 releases us from lingering isolation. We have been freed by the emotional and mental changes we made through the process of this step. We feel a weight being lifted from our shoulders. We are now ready for the challenge of working Step 9. Thanks for listening. Join me next time as we move on to Step 9.